Hi, okay. What do you mean, sadly? I had to do a bit of a pause there, I think, because I was told that last week when I started talking, when it told me it was live, I wasn't live. The chat thing is being awkward. The best I can say about it is at least the text is visible, except when I type. I don't know what to do about it. It's like YouTube don't want me to live stream. You know, they sent all these things going, oh, you should live stream here. We're really great at it. And then things like this. Obviously, this chat box is not directly part of YouTube, but it's the YouTube live chat viewer. So they must have had something to do with it. These are not the settings I have. You know, the name of the people typing is not supposed to be black. It says, it's quite clear here, it's white, and then that's not white. It could be any number of things. I have no idea. Do you know what another funny thing was? I mean, I looked at the YouTube FAQ because I was trying to find something out. Couldn't find it out, it's not in there. So it's obviously not frequently asked. But one frequently asked question was, oh, how come it takes so long to upload the video after I stop streaming? And I thought, I'm interested in that. Oh, hello, get the cable out of the way. And it just said, if you do a long video, it takes longer, doesn't it? The problem is, though, when I used to do this on Twitch and then export it to YouTube, it took about 20 minutes to half an hour to process. When it's on YouTube already, and I just say, right, can you now allow it to be viewable by everyone else? It takes like 2 hours. I was like, what? I don't understand. I do not understand. I mean, Twitch, obviously, I'll continue to use that for gameplay purposes. I'm not doing gameplay here. No. Anyway, let's get on to some World of Warcraft stuff. So I notice that Forbes have been interviewing World of Warcraft again, you know, and they've been asking about Mythic Plus dungeons. I don't know if anyone has seen this, but basically when it comes to getting Azerite armor, you won't get Azerite armor from Mythic Plus dungeons directly. You only get it from your weekly cache. And also there seems to be different things based on the +4, +7 and +10. So to get the... I don't know whether that means that the item level doesn't scale at all. I'm not sure that would make sense. Maybe they just mean the traits themselves. But there seems to be a bit like normal heroic mythic dungeons. There seems to be different gates of the Azerite traits. I don't know exactly what they meant by that. I might have to read the Forbes interview in more detail later. I only just looked at the snapshot. But the Azerite from the weekly cache, I don't know any more than just that, I'm afraid. Hi, everyone. Clefado. The stream is available. Well, actually, yeah, in terms of watching it straight away, yes, there is a place where you can actually just go to see past live streams. But I mean, in terms of actually just making it so that it appears in the video list, which is more useful. That takes some time. Anyway. I've been having more trouble with YouTube again today because I uploaded my the Lord of the Rings video for tomorrow because I'm trying to get into the habit of getting ahead of myself and scheduling things so it comes out at a set time. So I was doing that, and then all of a sudden I had no option to schedule it. I thought, what? No, and I cancelled it, and then I did it again, and it gave me the option to schedule it, but not the time. It didn't let me choose the time. So it's coming out at a time that I didn't ask for tomorrow. But at least it's coming out tomorrow anyway. But anyway, oh dear. Your understanding is the old 10 moved to 2. Yes, that's right. Tyrannical and Fortified, you now get it. It's basically Mythic Plus. So at Mythic Plus, it'll either be Tyrannical or Fortified. The reason they did that is because there were people apparently that were able to do like +7, +8, +9. And then they'd upgrade their key to, you know, to do a +10, and they'd just hit a brick wall. It was like the gap between +9 and +10 was way harder than +8, +9, +7, +8, and so on, just because of that tyrannical fortified being added in. because, of course, the DPS requirements for either of them were suddenly fiercer, as well as the healing requirements. So they've moved it down below just so that you don't have that sudden wall when you want to go from a +9 to a +10. I suppose it means you've got to scale the wall before you get there. It doesn't make a +10 any easier. It just... So arguably the curve is going to be steeper all the way up now, but it's going to at least be a curve, not a big old step, a cliff face for some people. Oh dear. So yeah, but I actually think that sounds quite good, because I was fearing to get the Azerite traits we'd want, having to repeat lots. So that's, to me, sounds like Blizzard are sensitive to the idea that we had to do too much repeatable content that we didn't really want to do in Legion. And it gives me hope for other aspects of the game. So it's nice to say some good things at the moment about the design philosophies, because God knows I've been moaning enough about classes recently. But so yeah, that would actually be quite good. So it presumably means I don't have to spam Mythic Plus. It presumably means, okay, a +10 could be really hard to start with, but it just means, you know, go as high as you can, and then that's it. Don't have to keep spamming it. And then if also you don't have to keep spamming islands, that sounds pretty good to me. Even if I have to do more world quests than I would like to do. You know, it sounds to me like I could maybe move to a situation where I'm effectively doing a Mythic Plus or a few Mythic Pluses a week, maybe. I mean, even that I'm not going to appreciate, but it'll be better. It'll be better. So, yeah. But as I say, it's more than just what they've done. It's the thought behind it that I'm encouraged by. Because I still don't know how much realistically we're going to have to do outside of raid time. Something on my webcam is bothering me. There we go. I don't know how much we're going to have to do outside of raid time. Or I. Because, you know, I'd rather just... I'm not exactly a raid logger. Well, I am at the moment, just because end of expansion. But generally speaking, I like to be on every day and do some stuff. But I like to be able to do it on a casual basis. And raiding is when I like to do my stuff that's less casual basis. And in between, I'd rather spend the time looking up, you know, how to do better in the next raid and get bosses down. Don't think you have to be afraid of spamming world quests unless farming AP, but we may have to. That's what I mean. It's entirely down to how much AP do we have to farm. Like, I'm not concerned at all about the first 2 weeks. In all expansions, you've had to farm for gear for the first couple of weeks anyway. That's just standard. And the first couple of weeks of this expansion, hey, I'm off work. So that's no big deal at all. Yes, it does also seem quite quick indeed getting geared up on the beta when you're doing world quests. I've noticed that. Although I've also noticed that some world quests like take you to go to res and it's not even an elite dragon symbol around it, and you ain't soloing those. What's going on with the conflicting stories in Darkshore? What conflicting stories? I may be missing all sorts of things at the moment. I haven't been mucking about with scenarios and stuff like that on the PTR or even lately on the beta. So anything to do with Darkshore, but what conflicting? I mean, presumably you're talking about related to leading up to the burning of Teldrassil, which people are still trying to claim is an alliance plot. Oh dear. Can't wait for it all to be over and people can stop moaning about it. The Horde and Alliance stories conflict with each other. Well, that happens in the Battle for Lordaeron. I talked about that with the Battle for Lordaeron cinematic as well. You know, because there's this... It does annoy me. Both factions have different stories that don't link. Yeah, okay, I haven't noticed that. I haven't seen that. But it doesn't surprise... I haven't done it from the Horde point of view, actually. That's probably why I haven't noticed it. But it doesn't surprise me because I have done the Battle for Lordaeron from both Horde and Alliance point of view. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. Most of it is sort of okay. Most of it you get away with. But there's a couple of bits where you just go, no, they're mutually exclusive, these two events. Only one of these events realistically happened. Which one is it? Unlike, in Legion, where the scenarios at the start of Legion, where it was the same events, just from slightly different viewpoints. I think there's a third party involved. Greymane. No, Greymane wouldn't do that. That's his home, for goodness sakes, his own people. Living in Donassus now. He doesn't want to move on. Can you sneak a wreck question if it's really quick? Do we still think we'll see a change to Divine Judgment? I very much doubt we'll see major changes to anything now. Maybe at 8.1, like they said. Because they did say expect no more changes. And I'm not hearing anything different from the developers. But that probably means that we're not going to be using Divine Judgment. They can tune it. They could still just reduce the number of stacks and buff them up. And maybe make it usable, but it still won't be good. Anyway. Rathian or Malfurion did it? Well, there's the cartoon about Malfurion doing it, isn't there? But realistically, I don't think so. Nor do I believe Rathian would. Nor do I even believe that Rathian is in Blizzard's thinking at the moment. I really don't think he's in their thinking at all. He may come back at some point, but I think that there's no plan to bring Rathian back. That's not the same thing as they're planning not to bring him back. I think they just... I think it's like they do all this all the time. They have a character, they have a use for it, they bring it in. And then they just drop it. And then later on, they're doing a story, they're thinking, oh, Rathian would be really good for this story. Yeah, let's bring him back. With some nonsense about what he's been doing in the meantime. Because his absence at the moment, with the storyline being as it is no less baffling than Jaina's absence. And what did they say about Jaina? Oh, yeah, she went off fighting demons on her own. And it's like, well, I never saw her. We were always around where the real power base of the demons was concentrated. Where was she? In Desolus, beating up the Infernals? That I was doing when I was like level 40 or something? No. Absolute horseshit. They'll do the same thing for Rathian when they bring him back. He'll have some bullshit reason why he wasn't actually around helping us save Azeroth, which is what he says he wants to do. Always blame the infinite dragonflight. He's full of revenge, must drive him crazy, and doing wanting peace. Well, he did start to come around to it. No, he'd start to come around to it in the novel, didn't he, Greymane? Yes, he is very hate-filled. There's no getting away from that. But his hatred is more for Sylvanas than I would even say the wider Horde. Obviously, he's not very happy with the Horde, because after all, the Horde made her war chief. But I think he reserves his ire really effectively for Sylvanas. He has gained a better understanding of the Forsaken indeed. That's what I mean, so in the book. So I think his hatred is very much focused on that one person. Is it the same with Deathwing in Warcraft 2? Katagap. Well, not necessarily, because he was like hiding away. He wasn't supposed to be out on a crusade doing anything. So they got away with that. Whereas Rathian has specifically said that he wants to protect Azeroth. He hasn't been injured. There was even in Legion Alpha a quest where he was there, but they changed it to, he was Ebonhorn basically, and then they changed it to some, just Ebonhorn being some random black dragon as opposed to Rathian specifically, which may have made more sense. So, and the same with Jaina, they were specifically supposed to be protecting Azeroth, whereas Deathwing could have had an absence and it was alright. He was just licking his wounds. Sylvanas burned Teldrassil because a night elf dead. Call her evil. She's morally grey. Morally grey. Oh dear. Be interesting if Sylvanas was cured of her forsaken nature and returned to her mortal state. And then Thrall can return as War Chief. Thrall can probably return as War Chief whenever he likes, quite frankly. He's just been, but he just doesn't really want to. Okay. Do I think the current balance between classes allows for all classes to be competitive in higher Mythic Plus keys? No. The way they design classes makes that impossible. Whether it'll be dominated by the same specs as in Legion is questionable. It may not be. But it will be dominated by certain specs. And the whole way Blizzard try... I mean, you're going to get that in MMOs in general, probably, especially when you've got as much as 12 classes. Even if they made more of an effort, you're still going to have that, I think. But with their particular design philosophy, it exacerbates the situation hideously. Classes with buffs are going to have an advantage in smaller groups. As long as it's the right buffs. Obviously, Windwalker Monk won't necessarily bring much if you've got, say, a Boomkin and a Mage in the group. You'd much rather have the Demon Hunter. So it all depends on what you've got in as to which buffs are more useful. But, well, and that's a debuff case. I mean, the buffs, some people in Mythic Plus may be... They may decide that the scrolls are good enough if they get much more benefit from another class. So they're not necessarily going to definitely have to take, say, a warrior, a mage, and a priest. But the debuffs is a different matter, isn't it? Is it a thing in Chronicle 2 that Deathwing was married to Kalia before writing? Will he be the unknown soldier? No, surely not. Was it? No, if they wanted to go, if they really wanted to push this, I think Bolvar would be the prime candidate. But it's equally possible that they're just trying to get us to think it was Bolvar. Because they have been, of late, trying to get us to think certain things. Some of them have been super obvious. It's been too forced. Something like this is a bit more subtle. So either it's probably Bolvar or it's not Bolvar. They just want us thinking that for some reason. Yes, but lots of things have changed then, Frozen Man. That's the thing. So it's very difficult to know where we are with anything now. With the gear restrictions especially, is it even possible to balance now for cutting edge Mythic Plus levels? Gear restrictions. What about the gear restrictions? What gear restrictions? What class do I feel was the most underrated in Legion? I don't know, because I don't necessarily think any class was underrated, unless you're talking about people at large, but I don't know what people at large would necessarily have thought was underrated. Whenever Ret Paladins are strong, they're always underrated, because people always underrate Ret Paladins, and they were very strong in Taurus. Can no longer swap gear in a Mythic Keystone dungeon. Oh, I see what you mean. Generally speaking, no. However, someone did make... Because someone... I was saying last week, someone made this point, oh, you must be crazy. It's not... Because I have no problem with this not being able to swap gear. Given that you can't swap talents, why not swap gear as well? I think it's fine. Because Mythic Plus has that competitiveness to it. So I absolutely... I'm fine with Blizzard's explanation for that. And then someone said, you must be crazy. Like, oh, it's really bad. And I said, okay, well, you might be right. But could you explain to me why it's really bad? And then they blathered on something as well. You must be retarded. And I said, okay, fine. Can you give me any way in which you would be disadvantaged by this? And they haven't responded. The only thing anyone has ever said that might be, maybe, is druids. Because druids could go, like they could be feral or boomkin, say. And if things got a bit hairy, they could just go bear form. So you could argue druids have a number of advantages, as they've had a number of advantages in Mythic Plus now. They're a battle reser, and they have the ability to go into bear form if things get a bit dicey. Obviously, you'd rather your healer didn't do that, but as a DPS, you can do that. So you might argue druids, but generally speaking, no, I don't think it's necessarily that big a deal. I think that's one like niche situation where maybe you give druids a bit more of an advantage. Hi, Beck. Thank you very much. How do I feel about Azerite armor for Ret? I'm going to be doing a little bit of very basic comparisons of them this weekend, or that's my aim anyway, but they're not yet on the Simcraft, because I'm going to have to do some actual work and do a little bit of basic maths to try and see what it might do, but it'll be very rough and ready. Some classes stack different stats for AoE and single target. Yeah, but the same thing applied to talents. You know, there are some talents that are better for single target and there are some talents that are better for AoE. You already had to choose those. And the way you choose them is not difficult either. If it's fortified and it's a dungeon where there's a load of shitty trash like Blackrook Hold, you go AoE. If it's tyrannical and the bosses are particularly brutal, you go single target. And then you just make a judgment call on anything in between. I don't see a problem with that in competitive play. It's inconvenient, but then you could also argue it's inconvenient switching sets. There's only so many people switch sets anyway. Admittedly, they've been more serious players, but the more serious players will find a way. Because it's all comparative anyway. It's not like one person in the game is being hard. If one class in the game was more harshly affected by this than others, then you'd go, okay, that's not really on. But there's like one class that's potentially unfairly not so bothered about it, and that's druids, but everyone else is equally bothered, I think. So, you know, they will just cope. But the thing is as well, if that means that a particular class is more useful on horrible trash pack fortified week and they're not so good on horrible boss tyrannical week, well then that's no different to some classes just not being good for high Mythic Plus anyway. You know, that, as I say, is just a feature. Classes with poor survivability become more of a liability in Mythic Plus. No, they don't, because they would have had to switch anyway if they were to have that problem. And the problem there is, again, the problem there is not being able to switch the gear. The problem there is they've made some classes weak defensively when they shouldn't. Especially with Mythic Plus, with dungeons becoming more competitive, they should actually say to this is what I was talking about in my last video. They should actually look at those classes and go, look, you know, these ones are not being taken in high-end whatever because they don't have this tool that basically everyone else does. Well, they should have that tool. Well, yeah, Lexicus, I mean, it's the same with me. If you don't, I mean, there were certain times when I did push, but again, that was only when people wanted me to. I never really forced the issue myself. But of course, if you're not going to push high keys or what are high for you, then it doesn't really matter. You'll just go with whatever. This is specifically talking about people who do want to push them, which is reasonable, and it is a little unfair that you might have to have a different character for doing your Mythic Plus dungeons as compared to, say, your raiding. I'm not someone who's going to say that should be the case. You should be able to do it on any class and role you like. With today's maintenance, the Artefact retirement quest is now available on live service. Oh yeah, I saw something about that. Someone said as well that the Mage Tower hasn't expired, so there's a suggestion that the Mage Tower may now be permanently up until it's never up again, of course. So people don't have to wait for Windows, they can just do it. It's not like you switch gear all the time either. You just don't see the reason as to why the option is being removed. The option is being removed because of Azerite pieces. They don't want people swapping the Azerite pieces around. Now, for the people who liken them to legendaries, you will inevitably go, oh, why not? But, because this is the problem, Azerite pieces have taken from Legion, you would say they've taken over from legendaries, tier sets, and the pseudo talents, the new talents. But realistically, what they are is a replacement for the Azerite artifact, traits. That's what they actually are. You know, so they're not actually a replacement for legendaries. The legendaries are gone. You know, the Azerite traits are not there to replace them. They got rid of the legendary system in BFA because it was not popular in Legion. That's all there was to it. If everyone had loved the legendary system in Legion, it would still be here alongside Azerite traits in BFA. So the Azerite traits are a direct replacement for the artifact. Well, for talent, they're basically like talents. So that's why they don't want you swapping them. Azerite pieces so far seen in beta are much more in line with set effects than legendaries. Well, I mean, that's the thing. See, they're not even necessarily a replacement for those because they're not like those. You don't need the no set bonuses. But Blizzard did say that in terms of power, they should be equal. Obviously, they're talking about the raid ones. They should be equal to about a 2-set bonus. Still don't know Azerite powers from raid pieces. No, I certainly don't anyway. I've not seen anything on those. They are keeping those quiet. The thing is, do you know what the mad thing is as well? Because they were asking, the various theory crafters, the ret ones, were asking, oh, are the Azerite traits on Simcraft yet? And the people that are doing Simcraft saying, no, they're not. And someone's saying that they probably should be doing that roundabout now because even Blizzard are asking for it. Because remember, Blizzard use Simcraft as well. You know, it's lovely to think they have their own system for modelling all these things. But the fact of the matter is they use logs and Simcraft just the same as the rest of us. So Blizzard are actually keen to get their hands on Simcraft using traits as well. But yeah, they're not in at the moment. So, but the thing is, because they're not showing us the raid ones, we can't even begin to look at those because don't know what they are. Seems you need to complete all the Magni quests before you can do the artifact thing. Well, that makes sense. Swapping to Horde makes you have to do them again. Well, you know, yeah, there's those Silithus quests. There's only so many of them, and I can go around. I'm not that bothered about them to redo those. I suppose I'll probably do that on Thursday because again, like we're in the situation where, in the guild I'm in now, where we're clearing in one night. And I guess that means Thursday's free. Obviously, England are playing this Thursday, so I may or may not stream. But I suppose while I'm watching it, I could just go around and finish those quests off. I also need to finish that Insurrection off so that I can get a Nightborn Mage. But you don't have to do it right now. You know, ruining your current raid logger status. You could always do it later, in about what, 3 weeks? 3 weeks until the pre-patch goes live. It maxes your concordance, does it? Before it takes it all away. Right. Oh, that sort of max. Well, that's no interest to me. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I should do that as well then. Because I don't think I actually have done them since I turned to Horde. Doing the Horde ones. So I'm gonna have to. Yeah. Well, I will have to do that then. Tomorrow it'll have to be, obviously. So much on. It's so too hot as well. Again, I'm getting further behind in all the things I need to do. Just because it's too hot. It's supposed to be even hotter on Thursday. You just want solo queue rated arenas, you behave yourself. What's the point of that? But, yeah, I mean, it's yesterday. It's like, I couldn't believe it. Yesterday, I went home. I could barely touch the steering wheel. It was that hot. And then this morning, I saw on the weather, oh, it's going to be even hotter today. I thought, you'd have no laugh. Oh, and by the way, it's going to be hottest of all on Thursday. Oh. I had a student in one of my classes quite upset about it. He was getting quite irate about that. He says, how can people actually want the heat? How can they actually want to go away to hot places on holiday? I have to say, well, I agree with you, but unfortunately, that's just how some people are. The point is not having to wait and cycle through bad PvP players. But if you sign up for a solo one, you would. What? Well, the last time I saw a thermometer, it was 32. But that was in a different... I mean, this room's not going to be any cooler because, you know, I've got lights in here, and this is the side of the house, unfortunately, where the sun is in the afternoon. It'd be much better if it was the other way around. My bedroom, which is on the other side of the house, is generally quite cool because it's warmer on that side when I'm at work. So by the time I've got home, the heat has dissipated. I don't think it's even humid here. I don't feel humid. And in fact, it hasn't really rained very much recently. I think the grass has started to turn yellow, in fact, if I paid attention to any of the glass. My lessons planned. Well, the only lessons I've got to do at the moment are for school children coming in to do taster sessions in the college, which we tend to do the same ones each year that happens. So that, in theory, means, yes, I've planned it. However, they often change the length of these sessions. So it's always basically me just doing stuff until the time runs out and then sending them on their way. What have I missed here? Well, you say you're not, if you randomly queue up, that you're not going to get bad players if you pair with a certain rating. Well, you still are, because people can be carried to a bit of a rating. It's the same as in Mythic Plus, isn't it? With the Raider IO score, not the Raider, the Mythic Plus IO score. And, you know, they can be, you know, get higher than a whole group of their skill level would have done. And then that makes them look better for another one. And then maybe, you know, they get into another one and they look out and somehow they get boosted to a win there. And you can end up with plenty of bad people with those ratings. Ultimately as well, I don't understand why people don't join guilds for these things. Like, if you want to do group content, surely you'd want to join a guild of common purpose, where people are at the appropriate level for you and want to do the same things as you. That's the point of a guild. That was another thing I saw in that interview, actually, Blizzard talking about it. They said that the voice chat that's coming in game is not intended, and the community stuff, they say it's not intended to replace Discord. Which sounds baffling to me because it clearly is. As they said, it's intended to just allow people to chat for world quests and stuff where they don't want to give out Discord details. Sounds a bit weird, but anyway, okay. Could you imagine people going on to voice chat for random pug type situations like world quests? Why would people want to go on voice chat for world quests? People don't like being social. No, this is quite true. It's quite true. Do you know what? I remember, this is how MMOs have changed. So, when I first started playing World of Warcraft, you'd be in an area doing a quest, someone else would be in the area, and you'd team up. You know, I never had anyone, if I sort of said, do you want to do this together? I never had anyone say no, sod off. And whenever anyone said it to me, I never used to say no, sod off. Now, whenever I see someone in the same area, I just wish they would die. If they try and... Well, first of all, no one ever asks me to join a group. They just spam invite me. They just randomly invite me without saying anything, which is just rude. I will every time tell them to sod off. Go away. Don't want your help. You're a hindrance to me. Piss off. So yes, it's much less sociable now. But hence the importance of being in a guild, because that's the only social aspect you'll see to the game now. And it's probably the same. I don't think it's to do with World of Warcraft. I think it's to do with MMOs in general. I think that's just how people are now. Communities are going to be really nice for players engaged in more than one high-end activity. Potentially, yes, that would be one benefit of it. I suppose it depends on how it takes off. You know, are people going to look for these communities? How are they going to be flagged to them? You could be in a Mythic Plus community to push keys and a separate one for rated BGs. Indeed, yeah. Absolutely. I don't like at the moment, though, how on the beta, I can't tell who's online in my guild. I don't get that. I can tell via LVUI how many are online in my guild. I can't see their names. I'm not really sure what that is, or if it's a bug or what. I've reported it as a bug. I'm hoping it's a bug. You're a bit concerned about the add-ons changes. You got so used to using them, you'd hate to see them go away. The quest group add-ons will no longer work. Well, that is because... I mean, I don't know a huge amount about it, I have to say. But my initial thought to something like that would be... I would have thought the World Quest add-ons would have been used more for... They were always used for non-World Questing purposes anyway, as well as World Quest. But there's a much higher proportion of them, I think, in BFA would have been used for arranging death squads to go around with the war mode. The community's function seems more like Blizzard's attempt to compete with Discord. It absolutely does to me. I think it's because Blizzard sees in Discord a way for lots of players to discuss things that they have no control over. I mean, they can join the class Discords, of course, but they can't be scanning it all the time, because the only people that will join those class Discords are like class developers, and they're not going to sit there watching them all day. So I think, yeah, they just... And also, they won't be able to see any of the hidden channels as well. So I think they just, yeah, they don't like the loss of control. For grouping purposes, seems a lot more convenient what they add on. Oh, I think the communities thing certainly has some benefits to it. It's just that I think the prime use of it, the prime motivation, is because they don't like Discord. They don't like the fact that people are using this community that's exploding in popularity because it's so accessible, and they have no control over it. Why doesn't the World Quest add-on work anymore? I don't know if anyone can answer that. As I say, my guess would be because it would just be used for organising death squads. But that, I don't think that Blizzard would necessarily have to be opposed to that. Because some of those world quests you are going to need groups to do. You know, even in decent gear. I suppose at some point the gear gets good enough that you don't. But Oops, I've lost it. But I don't actually know what the reason is. On to that Mythic Plus thing, by the way, I've just noted here when I was writing something down. It does say that they are balanced around the idea that you can't swap gear. But of course, they've said things before which haven't always turned out to be true. No, convince me to buy the Sylvanas statue from the EU store. Then no, I don't want a Sylvanas statue. I like the idea that there is now an EU store, but not for that. Maybe teaming up for group content will become a thing again when the Death Squad start up, because you know people are going to try it out. Making a group in the pre-made still works. You're surprised we haven't seen more API changes targeting weak cores? What specifically about them? Blizzard don't have they don't have a problem with, I mean, they've been very pro add-ons all the way through World of Warcraft's lifetime. They just don't want add-ons that basically do things for you or make too many decisions for you. They don't mind them for giving information. Because here's the thing. World of Warcraft couldn't be as it is now if it wasn't for the fact they allowed add-ons. They would have to have done some work to develop the UI options themselves. Because it's ridiculous. The standard UI is appalling. Well, the more recent one, Martin, would be in Nighthold. There was an add-on. Although, to be honest with you, it was not needed. I don't know why. It wasn't a big deal when they disabled it. But there was an add-on for Star Augur on Mythic. Because what happened is randomly, well, not randomly, it was on a timer. At certain points of the fight, you got a constellation above your head. And what you had to do was you had to bump into someone with the same constellation. But if you bumped into someone with a different constellation, you might as well wipe it because you'll get a huge arcane debuff on everyone. That basically means you are going to die. Just wipe it now, start again. So you could have 0 errors on this thing. So you had to think carefully about your route and meeting up with each other and stuff like that. So this add-on was made that put, I think it was like a green bar above the people's heads who had the same constellation as you and a red one above everyone else. So you just go, oh, green, yeah, I'll go for that. Which probably didn't help for people who were colourblind, but never mind. I suppose you could use the colourblind settings. So they disabled that. But the thing is, when they disabled it, it was because they disabled it round about the time we started on that boss. And it was no big deal. It's actually quite easy to see. Because they were quite distinctive and different colours anyway. So it was like easy. But that's the sort of thing they disable. Where it's basically giving you too much information. You know, or in other words, just thinking for you. It's doing thought processes for you. It's probably because the idea that you can complete a world quest by walking to an area, pressing a button to join a group and having the quest auto-complete with other people doing the work. I'm not sure Blizzard are all that bothered about that myself. I don't think they're bothered. Because even those people are still spending the time online, which is ultimately what Blizzard want World Quest for. They want us to be online and engaged in the game. So they'll argue that that's still happening. And I don't think people... I mean, I'm sure people don't like the idea of others sponging off what they're doing in a game. It's the same reason why people will... Before the feature came in Battlegrounds, if people went AFK, that'd be... they'd be pointed out and reported and all the rest of it. And then they brought in the things. If you went AFK, you automatically left the battleground. They've made some nice improvements to the base UI over the past few expansions. It is still appalling. Do I like the changes to the standard UI in BFA with the action bars? It's of no consequence to me. I don't see it. I see it as a slight improvement, I suppose. But given that I use Elf UI, it's still not as good. Until it can do what Elf UI can do, then it's always inferior. But like I say, Blizzard get away with these things because they allow add-ons. They encourage people to use add-ons. They make it easy for people to develop and use add-ons with the game. So, you know, that's all fine. It means they don't have to work hard themselves at their UI. You climbed the mountain terrain, then jumped outside the map. Isn't that more effort than just actually playing the battleground? Did I see that the artifact retirement quest line is now available? Yes, someone did mention that, yeah. I've seen a few things mentioned. So it's two of you asking at the same time. We haven't really discussed it as such, other than it's a thing. And we should probably do it. And in my case, because I've just changed faction, I'll have to do all the stuff in Silithus again. Classic AV. Wouldn't that be even more of a pain? Been thinking of my suggestion for a level squish in lieu of stat squish. It would have been better to do... well, you could always do both. But a level squish, yes, would have been preferable for me. Because it's so daunting for new players. But Blizzard don't agree, so that's that. I don't think they've even considered it. I don't think they've even publicly ever mentioned a level squish. No, the Silithus stuff doesn't take long. I mean, I'm sure I could do that tonight. I need to do some more painting tonight because I'm not exactly getting behind on that. Especially as what I have planned is a 2,000 point army, whereas what I'll be playing for my first game is a 720 point army. So, you know, that'll be easy. But still, I want to get something done. But yeah, I mean, I did the Silithus even on beta, even when I'd leveled up a bit and it was therefore technically more difficult. It's still quite quick and easy. It'll be an absolute doddle, you know, in live servers. Would have fixed the stats swelling along with it. It would. It would have been easier to, you know. But they're not interested in a level squish. They're not bothered. They obviously think that there's no point in it. And maybe it would give them a bigger headache than doing squishes. I don't know. Maybe it would. Maybe it would be more technically difficult for them to do that than the stat squish. Who knows? I don't. But it is interesting that they've never even talked about it. Not even mentioned it. Whether to say that it's something they're thinking about or something they're not thinking about because reasons. It would be a lot better if levels... Hold on. Didn't increase with each expansion. There's a lot of things that I don't think should be there for expansions. There's no need for new levels with an expansion. In fact, interestingly, someone said earlier on a comment how if they didn't change classes, there'd be no justification for a new expansion. Whereas that's completely arse about face. Because the justification for a new expansion is new content. You know, like a significant amount of new content. That's all you actually need with a new expansion. Don't need anything else. And in other MMAs I've played, that's what's happened. A new expansion comes out. They don't make wholesale changes to the classes. They're the same. They just give you your new content. But yeah, every expansion, Blizzard feel the need to change classes, to change other aspects of the game as well. But the thing is about classes is the fundamental nature of what your classes have to deal with. The fundamental nature of raid bosses, dungeon bosses, world content, PvP, all the rest of it, doesn't change. So why do they keep changing classes? Why don't they just make them work? Because the rest of the stuff that might necessitate a change in classes Never changes anyway. Hi, James. No problem. Blizzard certainly hidden 2 years worth of content well for BFA. You can't see 6 months worth yet. Well, you won't, though. You won't see the content. All the only content you can see at the moment are the dungeons and the one warfront, the islands, and the very first raid. And that's not intended to last more than a few months. Then it'll be the next raid coming out, but they haven't put that out for testing yet, which is unusual because this time at Legion we were testing Nighthold bosses. So I'm not really sure. Excuse me, what's going on there? Evening, Varashi. Will I be doing an update this week on my painting? I won't be doing an update on my painting because this week's video, I've now read all the rules of Age of Sigmar, apart from the General's Handbook, because I don't get that till next week. But I've read the rules, so I'm going to be comparing the rules with Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Then next week is when I go through my Age of Sigmar box. That being said, if I do manage to get any painting done tonight, and I have to say I am fucking tired, because the problem with this weather and bloody summer, I keep waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm knackered, I'm falling asleep all day, because the sun keeps waking me up, even though I've got the blinds, but the blinds are useless. But I can't go to bed earlier because I'm an insomniac. So, but hopefully after this, I'll be able to do some painting and I can maybe use some footage of that in the background. But I won't be doing an actual update. But one good thing is that I will be able to do my swords next week because I have been able to find... Someone did recommend a shop that does deliver on Saturdays and it sells paint. So I will have some silver paints this weekend. Maybe they change classes because they're afraid people get bored with their class. I think the reason they change them now is because that's always been the case. It's Pavlovian, it's conditioned. As soon as a new expansion comes out, one of the first things people are asking is, oh, I wonder what's going to change about my class. They're expecting it, they want to know. So it's conditioned. However, what the reason was to begin with, it may have been as simple as this. So Vanilla came out, most of the classes were a bit crap. So then they improved them for TBC. They made an effort. They did a lot of work on improving them. So obviously there were massive class changes for TBC because some specs were completely laughable. They made them all valid. Some better than others still, but they were all valid. Then for Wrath, because it wasn't perfect, they did a lot of tinkering. So there was another obviously major change for Wrath as well. And I think at that point, it just became expected that with each expansion, there would be major class changes. Even though you could argue that in Wrath, apart from DKs, because obviously they were the new class, they took a bit of work, that the classes were actually okay. And they could have left them at that, but they didn't. Hang on a minute, what's this? Silly question. How does exactly contact Thete for the mailbox? For the mailbox? What do you want to contact me? I'm here. Hello. I find the comments just by reading through the comments to videos, if that's what you're asking. The start of an expansion tends to be a fresh start. It's a chance for Blizzard to significantly address core issues. Yeah, but they don't, because they also feel the need to change things for the sake of changing. There's certain things they feel the need to change. They feel the need to add a load of extra levels on. They feel the need to change the classes. They feel the need to change other aspects of the gameplay. Like Mythic Plus Dungeons, they didn't have to change anything about them. I'm not saying good changes aren't welcome, and I think the changes they've announced have actually, by and large, been quite good. But regardless, they would have changed them anyway, just for the sake of it. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if the enforced personal loot was only brought in for BFA because they couldn't think of anything to change about raids. No, they're just thinking, oh, we need a new thing for raids this expansion. What we're going to do? I don't know. We've done everything. It's all perfect now. Ah. I know. We'll take away their loot options. Makes me laugh that the moment they decide to do minimal class changes is the moment the classes are worse than been since vanilla. Well, it was laughable that they thought they would need minimal changes because everyone else that has any idea about their classes knew that this was not the case. When I read upon, I have read up on the rules. I am doing a video on it, but the first video I'm doing is comparing it to Warhammer Fantasy Battle because the phrase I keep hearing is they've streamlined the rules. They've streamlined the rules. In some ways they have, but in other ways they've made it worse. They've made it more complicated than Warhammer Fantasy Battle was. But anyway, never mind. That video is for me. I should be recording that tomorrow and it come out on Thursday. The beginning of Kata. See, I didn't play the beginning of Kata. I quit fairly early on in Wrath, so I wasn't there at all for the beginning of Kata. You were a bear tank, and due to some mechanics, you did more damage than most of the DPS. Well, there was a similar thing in MoP, of course, when they brought in... what do they call it? Vengeance? Where tanks did extra damage as long as they had threat. And so you had tanks doing silly amounts of damage. That was pretty crazy. Because, especially when you had 10 and 25 man raiding still. Because in 10 man raiding, you had 2 tanks. And in 25 man raiding, you had 2 tanks. So the proportion of this super damage you were doing was greater for 10 man than 25 man, which of course created tuning issues when they were trying to tune those 2 difficulties, or the 2 sides of the dungeons. Raids, I mean. They did also kill tier bonuses for raids this expansion. Yes, this is true. They did do that, yes. Blizzard do seem to have a real problem with player agency. Oh no, it is actually a fact. And I know this for a fact. I'm not surmising anything. They think we're all arseholes. There is a reason why engagement has gone down with the community. Like, I know Ian does his live Q&A things, although there's no point in them being live. I think, you know, which is a good thing. I'm not going to criticise that. But engagement in general has gone right down. And part of that reason for that is because it's a deliberate thing. And it's because they think we're all arseholes. And every time they say something, we'll twist their words and make out that they've said something that they haven't. That is actually what they think. You made a piece on Mythic Plus gear swapping. Yeah, it's very difficult to link things like that. Problem is, if you link something in a comment on a video, it generally goes into the spam folder. And at a time when I'm getting a lot of comments, which I am at the moment, like the way the comments go is you've got your normal comments. I tend to mostly be able to read all those. Not absolutely everyone, unfortunately, but I get through most of them. Then there's reported. So if you put any like naughty language in there, it probably ends up in there. Sometimes I look at it and think, actually, there's nothing wrong with it. And I see, there you go. See, I've got to manually put that one there. You've got to... So sometimes, yeah, with things like that, you think, nah, there's nothing wrong with that. And you allow it. Generally speaking, I err on the side of not allowing any of those comments. Because if YouTube are saying to me, we don't like this comment, I risk it not liking my channel if I allow them all. Then there's the spam folder, which sometimes is spam. And sometimes it's just people posting links, which are perfectly fine. So, yes. But also, they're removing the ability to privately message on YouTube. The devs think that because for the group it's true. For what group? What went on about? There are a lot of trolls, of course. Indeed. Oh, yeah, there's no argument about that. But everyone has to put up with trolls. I have to put up with trolls. I manage. I cope with it. Water off a duck's back. I don't understand why they can't cope with it. See, they, you know, and they also have their army of white knights as well. Surely that balances it all out. All they have to do is try and focus on what is the genuine feedback. The problem is that, like anyone who has a load of people who will slavishly tell them how great they are, they don't like the criticism, even when it's valid. They don't like it. So sometimes you have to be quite careful about how you phrase it. You know, and the thing is, for me, I'm from somewhere called Yorkshire, and we can't be arsed with any of this bollocks. All this, because sometimes you have to do this as a teacher, and it grates on me. Like, you know, you got to tell a student that what they're doing is a load of rubbish. But you can't just go, well, sometimes I can, because just how I am. Like someone was trying to present me today with some work that had clearly been copied and pasted. And it had clearly been copied and pasted because they brought me some work. I said, no, this isn't what we're looking for. This has got nothing to do with what I've asked you to do. He went off. 10 minutes later, came back with 3 sides of typed work. And I said, you've never typed that in 10 minutes. And he said, yeah, I have. No. So I went through it and I said, right, what's this word mean here? And he didn't know. So off he went. So I didn't mess about with him. But often you have to go to a student, oh, I can see what you're trying to do there. Yeah, almost right, but not quite. What you need to do is this instead. Whereas what you should really be saying to them is, you haven't listened to a word I've said, have you? Chuck that in the bin. Do it again. Do it properly, will you? But never mind. Rant over. So that's unfortunately the way I am most of the time. I can't be bothered flanneling someone up, you know, buttering them up, just to throw in a criticism in amongst the compliment sandwich. Because the compliments are lies. Oh dear. Back in Cata, Druid still just had feral for... Well, yeah, they had 1 spec. So you had people who would be double feral, wouldn't you? 1 for their bear spec and 1 for their cat spec. I'm missing stuff. I'm missing all sorts of comments now. Cat also still have proper talent trees. I have no issue with the current talent trees. What I have an issue with is the divergence in baseline abilities for specs, as I was talking about. How many correct answers have you had for the competition? I haven't checked. I haven't seen any yet. That's not to say there aren't any. I just haven't checked yet. I mean, the second clue only went out yesterday. And there's no way of doing it from 1 clue. It's probably not straightforward to do it from 2. Probably all right to do it from the 3rd, and you should definitely get it from the 4th. Let's see. Cata had the look of the old talent trees, but there were virtually no options in them. Well, this was the case from Wrath for me. As a paladin, for example, I could get all the DPS boosting talents by level 60, but the cap was level 80. So that meant 20 talents. And nowadays you'd go, oh, 20 talents to spend on utility, fantastic. But at the time, I thought, no, that means that I haven't been able to boost my DPS via talents for 20 levels. Dark Silence. I mean, what you could try and do is try and PM me on Discord, possibly, because that way I might see a link. But I don't necessarily always get to respond to all things, I will just say, because sometimes I do get a lot of messages. And sometimes if it's, you know, well. Your off-tank had trouble with aggro if you use your damage skills normally. Well, I remember when Guardian Druids, not Guardian, well, Feral Druids at the time, I should say, but Bear Druids became super useful. And although they were useful once or twice in TBC, they weren't really main tank material. And then at the end of when the pre-Wrath patch came in, I remember our Bear Druid being delighted by this. I mean, obviously he was a cat most of the time, but he liked to be bear. Yeah, he was absolutely delighted. I loved it. The class design video, yeah, it seems to have got quite a lot of views in just 24 hours, doesn't it? But I did strongly suspect it would be hugely controversial. These sort of things always are. Never mind. The class redesign for Legion was more about making life easier for themselves. I don't really know what it was about, other than they wanted to do the artifact. I think it was just born of this artifacts idea. I think the artifacts idea probably came first, and it necessitated revamps for a lot. But then they tried to say that it was done totally separately, and you could just remove the artifact stuff, which is nonsense. Absolute rubbish. But the fact that they genuinely thought that, because they did, this is not them just coming up with bullshit as an excuse for why they're behind on class design. They genuinely thought that. It was mad. It's absolutely mad. Couldn't believe it when I heard it. You know, what is it, January, when he did that first Q&A on it? Couldn't believe it. The beginning of Kata was good. Dungeons were really hard. Yes, I heard that about them. In fact, I heard that a lot of people complained about how hard they were. And I blamed that on what we ended up with Mists of Pandaria, where we had no difficult dungeons at all. Like the so-called heroic dungeons were just level cap normal dungeons. There was nothing to them. Hi, Higpig. Well, you see, that's what notifications are for, isn't it? The expansion content seems to be from a dev bucket list of content like Old Gods. And well, you see, the Old Gods thing, I am utterly convinced that they are closing off the story to World of Warcraft. Not necessarily the game. I just think they want to do something different. I think that's why they've beaten the Legion. The Legion is gone now, right? And I think the next expansion is getting rid of Old Gods. I think they want to get rid of the two big existential threats, and I think they want to do something different. I'm utterly convinced of it. Utterly convinced. YouTube didn't notify you, didn't it? It notified me. That's a bit silly. Anyway. You didn't think the dungeons were that hard. Well, it also depends, I suppose. I can't say because I wasn't playing at the start of Kata. I do remember, though, when I came back to the game in Cataclysm and, excuse me, did some of those dungeons in a pug. I'd levelled. I got, went into some of those dungeons. And it was a bit hair-raising because here was me, formerly a veteran of the game, now a beginner, effectively, because I was going through these dungeons, not knowing what happens, not knowing the mechanics, but with a group of people, some of whom probably did, some of whom thought they did but didn't because they were rubbish. It was quite scary, actually. But I wasn't there for the start when they would have been at their most difficult. But if I had have been, I would also have been in a guild and would have been doing them with guild mates, in which case I'm sure it wouldn't have seemed that bad for me either. Especially as the guild I was in before I left World of Warcraft was like World 70-ish. So, would have done quite well on those dungeons. YouTube is magic when it wants to be. And at other times, it just infuriates me. I still can't believe that YouTube, with Google, with all its power, keeps putting things in that just make me think, how are you trying to attract people to stream on your service when you make things unnecessarily complicated? You tweeted me the link. Okay, I should have that then. Dear. Class balance rolling out seemed broken, made them inaccessible to some, either via skill cap or broken class. See, again, yeah, I don't know about that. All I can say is when I did come back to Cataclysm, I did not enjoy Ret Paladins. Oh, it was a mess. Absolute mess. I was quite pleased that Mops seemed to deal with some of those things. Healing Cataclysm dungeon at the start was hard. See, I've never got on with Resto Druids healing in dungeons because, you know, it's just hot. Or it was, anyway, when I last played at Resto Druid, which probably was Wrath, actually, thinking about it. But I never got on with them. Preferred, like, Shaman or Paladin healer, sometimes Priest. I quite like Mistweaver Monk in Mop. Because I played that quite a bit in the beta. I mean, I was going to do a bit of healing. I did a bit of tanking in some dungeons in Alpha. I was going to do a bit of healing as soon as I could use add-ons, which I can now use add-ons. The problem is that I've been into a couple of normal and heroic dungeons, and it's just made me want to kill myself. You know, some of the people I've been with, I think to myself, I really don't fancy trying out healing with this lot. Because I don't even like going in there as Ret, which I know what I'm doing with. Mop classes were a bit ability heavy. Well, Blizzard certainly thought so. They took a load off. In fact, ever since... So at the end of Mop, I actually did a video waving goodbye to some of the more iconic abilities ready for WoD. At the end of WoD, I did... No, it wasn't the end of Mop, was it? Or was it just at the end of WoD? Certainly at the end of WoD I did. Then at the end of... Yeah, that's right. At the end of Mop I did. At the end of WoD I did. So at the end of Legion I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm going to have to do another video waving goodbye to more abilities that we're losing. Except this time this is abilities they intended to lose before they even gave them to us. Which again, I still don't... And again, this is one of those others. This is one of those situations. It's a vicious cycle that feeds into them going, this is why we shouldn't talk to the community, because they're always giving us an hard time. And this is the latest example. Like Blizzard, like everyone's giving them a hard time because they're taking away our artifact trait abilities. And Blizzard are going, yeah, but we told you about that from the start. And also, you know, the artifacts are really powerful weapons. So when you give it up, obviously you're losing all these abilities, which in their own head makes sense. But to everyone else, it's just like, no, you gave us these things and now you're taking it away. It's a bit like saying, would you like a biscuit? Yes, please. And you extend a biscuit, they're about to grab it. You go, no, I'm eating this now. You know, and it's a bit like, well, why did you offer me a biscuit in the first place then? You know, people would rather just not have had the things in the first place than to have them briefly and then to immediately remove them. Did I hear about the new artifact quest? Yes. Yes, someone mentioned that at the start. They keep removing stuff. In the end, we'll just have a few skills and console ports. I don't think they want... I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to make a Warcraft version that is for the console. In fact, I'd be amazed if they're not thinking about that. But I don't think they want to do that with WoW. I think they'd want to do that with a new game. Will we have legendaries in BFA? Well, they say there's no plans for them. Here's what I think. I think if there's going to be a legendary at all, there isn't going to be one early on. I think there might be an Amanthal's Vision type thing at the end of the expansion. That's just purely reading between the lines in terms of what they've been saying about them. So basically, first of all, they've been going, no, no. And then it was like, no plans for legendaries. I just think that maybe Amanthal's Vision was an experiment to see how we would react to old style legendaries. In other words, the ones that have a really small chance to drop. and only one person can realistically get it. Legendary gem, no, they've done that before. That was silly. So, well, you see, Diablo 3 style legendaries are horrible. I sort of agree. But at the same time, I think it fits for Diablo 3, actually, in terms of the game it is. At the same time, this was my fear. I think if people had been positive about Legion legendaries, the Diablo 3 style legendary system may have been what we ended up with for BFA. It would not surprise me if they were thinking in those terms and that they were just testing the waters with Legion legendaries. And they dipped their toe in and went, no, bloody hell, that's hot. And went, let's forget about it. But I also think the Amanthal's vision was a test to see how we would react to legendaries that have a very low chance of dropping, and when they drop for one person. And if they feel that people aren't up in arms about it, I think they could do it again at the end of the expansion. I don't know what Blizzard think about Amanthals, actually, I have to say. I don't think, I've not seen them say anything about whether they think it's worked or not. If ever they do say they think it's worked, then I think it's probably certain they will do something similar for the last tier. Let's have a look. Travelled us to the far reach of the universe and threw down literal gods. To do so, we gathered powers and allies that would allow us to do so. We then sacrificed that power to save our world. Is that what they said? But in case they hadn't noticed, we didn't save the world, did we? It still seems to have a big old sword stuck in it. And apparently we're now going to save the world with a necklace. I'd have rather kept the Ashbringer, quite frankly, and sacrificed the necklace. For me, they removed some barriers and went for the fun factor. Now it's been yanked. It's like being offered 5-course meal and saying you had it. Now back to carrots and oatmeal. I don't like carrots. I don't like cooked carrots. I'm fine with oatmeal, though. Having sacrificed that power, we are naturally less powerful than we were. I think this arc has not been... It doesn't matter storyline-wise, though. The issue is, we've got a load of abilities. Some of those abilities we quite liked, and now they're gone. It's like, well... Because it's not like... The reason why some people are unhappy about those abilities going is not because they were powerful, it's because they helped the spec work quite well. So I'm not saying for everyone, but for some people who felt that their spec was quite good in Legion, why would you want to change what was quite good? And it only compounded the frustration for players when Blizzard then turned around and said, oh, by the way, we didn't think we were going to have to change much, so now we haven't actually got time to put your kit back together. So it's a bit like you've taken your car into the garage to have some things removed which you didn't want removing in the first place because it's too fancy for you. But you've got, you know, you've got a 200-mile journey to make the next day. You go in the next morning to pick your car up and it's lying in pieces and they went, sorry, we didn't have enough time to put it back together. Nice one. Now you've got to go in a taxi. You find it ironic that the devs are pushing for class uniqueness now when previously their goals for the class is considered the complete opposite. Well, the thing is, they're different developers. Developers come and go. So it's not necessarily inconsistency on the part of individual people in the development team. It may just be differing views of the people whose influence waxes and wanes. Because at any one time, like they always talk about this collective decision making. Bollocks. It's like any workplace, there are a small number of people, and it's not even just strictly along seniority lines. There are a small number of people who are always good at persuading those very influential people, and it all depends on who are the most influential people and what they think, and that's what ultimately then happens. And sometimes you get completely contradicting philosophies, and maybe that's just because you've got two people of equal influence who have very different ideas and they try and accommodate them both. Because some people can make everyone else's life a misery if they don't get their own way. Warriors lost stances, Death Knights lost presences, Paladins lost auras. Well, I mean, Death Knights, of course, were at least new for World of Warcraft. Warriors and Paladins have been there from the start, and auras and stuff like that with their own Warcraft 3. If you change only a few specs, maybe people will flock to those. They can be imbalanced that way. Well, no, you're actually, the problem is, like, one of the main reasons why it's often laughed at, it's a bit of a meme, that if Warriors, for example, if there's something game-breaking about Warriors, let's say, you know, Draft of Souls, say, something like that, Convergence of Fates, Blizzard don't really do a lot about it. Or when they do, it's when it's pointless anyway. Like, they nerfed Draft of Souls, didn't they? When Tomb of Sargeras came out. But Warriors didn't want it then anyway. It was useless. Well, not useless, but they didn't want it anymore. Whereas, if something like happens for a Ret Paladin, they will instantly nerf it. And they will sometimes over-nerf it. And it's not because, as people keep saying, they don't like Ret Paladins. It's simply because Ret Paladins are super popular. And they daren't allow anyone to think that there's something strong about them, because then you'll get even more people playing it. You know, they're constantly trying to sit on the number of people that want to play the class and spec specifically. How do I drink without making any noise? I have no idea. I mean, I am making noise. The microphone is maybe just quite good at not picking it up. Although it picks up plenty of other noises. I should really get one of those thingy filters stuff. The cloth. I actually have one. I just don't use it. Maybe I should use it. I don't know. Not a taxi, more like a Fred Flintstone car. We have to pedal push it to make it go. No. Uniqueness, though. You play Fury, Enhance, Havoc, Frost Decay at the core DPS ability level. You feel like you're playing exactly the same spec. I don't know. I don't think they're the same. Because that's the thing. I mean, the throughput abilities obviously should be different for each one. But people just go mad. They go, okay. In fact, I had one today. I wonder if they replied. I was trying to say to them. They were trying to say, oh, you know, not everything's built around raid. Well, no, actually, first of all, there was a comment going, not everything's designed around raiding, you know. To which the answer to that is, yes, it is. It is designed around raiding. Because if they didn't have to design it around people min-maxing content for raids, the classes were done 4 months ago. They could have just worked on tuning in the last 4 months. The only reason they're still, you know, going through nitty-gritty stuff is so that no raiders find anything ridiculously overpowered to take advantage of. So they absolutely are. But no, there was someone else who was saying, again about the raiding comment, and I said to them, why do you not use defensives and mobility? Do you not use these things outside of raiding? And if you don't use them, why do you care? And they said, no, of course I use them. To which I then said, well, what are you on about then? If you use those abilities, why are you arguing that your character shouldn't have those abilities? I don't understand. I don't really get what their point is. But I think some people, and it was an opinion-based video, so I have no issue with someone disagreeing with my opinion on it. But I still like them to make sense. And it's like some people just feel the need to defend Blizzard. Even though Blizzard don't defend themselves, because all the things that they stuck to their guns on at the start of Legion, now they're quite happy to say they got it wrong. But now they're sticking to their guns on other things that are also very bad. And at the end of BFA, they'll admit that they were wrong. But they'll never learn. They'll just keep going through that cycle. But anyway, never mind. But yeah, if throughput abilities are different for classes, then those classes feel different. I really don't see why you have to have differences in mobility and defensives. Things that we have no differences in interrupts because Blizzard understand that they're necessary. Well, movement and defensives are more necessary. Why do they feel that we shouldn't have standard ones of those? It wouldn't make the classes feel the same. Anyway. Wouldn't it be amazing to have legitimately 3D WoW played like Tekken or Street Fighter? No. No. But then I'm not a fan of that sort of game. The only time I ever used to play Tekken was when I went round to someone's house and we got drunk. And I was amazing drunk. I was amazing at Tekken. Wiped the floor with everyone. No idea what I was doing. No idea. But I used to absolutely kill everyone. But it's not my sort of game. It's not a game I would play sober. And I don't really get drunk these days, so, you know. Because I actually made a mistake. Because the thing is, every time I went to someone's house, I got drunk and they always had Tekken. So I eventually bought myself a PlayStation 2. This is going back some years now. And that's when I realized, just to play Tekken, that's all I got it for. And then I got it, I played it, and I thought, I don't actually like playing this game. What's going on? And then that's when I realised I could only like playing it when I'm drunk. And I'm not going to sit at home drunk. Stan's dancing was awesome. No, it wasn't, though, was it? It's all degenerate play. Stan's dancing, seal twisting, totem twisting. It's degenerate play style. I remember in like Warhammer Online, if you played a Chaos Warrior, they had these auras. And you had several of them. And you put the aura on, and it was permanent. But if you changed to a different aura, the new aura came on, but the old one wouldn't disappear straight away. It lasted another 8 seconds. So you could cycle between them, and you could actually maintain 3 auras at once. But it meant constantly cycling these 3 buttons every few seconds, as well as doing your other stuff. Now, apart from being a recipe for RSI, that is degenerate play style. You shouldn't have to do that. It's not instinctive. It's not good. So I'm not at all a fan of stance dancing, seal twisting, totem twisting, anything like that. Do I have concerns over just how much content in BFA you will enjoy making videos about? No. Because I will still be able to do this each week. I will still, as long as people comment on videos, I will still be able to do the mailbox each week. I will still be able to do a Retribution Paladin video each week. I will still do my Lord of the Rings videos each week. I will still, hopefully, do a Warhammer video each week. If there is nothing else to talk about, or nothing else to do a guide about, the worst that will happen is that I will have 5 videos out a week instead of 7. But I think it would be incredible if on a given week I wasn't able to do either a guide or a discussion video. At the moment, I'm managing to do 2 discussion videos a week at the moment. That being said, I have nothing planned for Friday. So unless something happens that triggers something I'd like to... I'm not going to do them for the sake of doing them. If I can't think of anything to talk about on Friday, there won't be a video on Friday. Sorry, okay, George. Okay, where is it? Bugger. Hang on, hold on. Right, Big G, I'm looking for Big G. I did read the comment. You've just said about people never worked out how to do it, but it's not, it's just a thing you learn to do, but it's still degenerate because you shouldn't need to do it. It's not normal. If you're thinking about yourself as a character, like your character in game, if this character was real, you can imagine using a particular ability, so like that. You can't imagine constantly flitting between 2 states. Um, 115. Hang on a minute. Oh, sorry, you're talking about the concordance maxing thing. Yes, well, again, it's something I shall have to do, yes. Said content, not general discussions. Well, sorry. The only other well, the content is going to be what it is. It's what it is now. Will make farming the last weeks of Mythic easier. Yes, I suppose it will. I wonder if they've nerfed anything. I suppose they haven't. They nerfed Argus last week. I don't think they nerfed anything else, though. What do I think about the spell effect mess in Melee at the moment? Well, worse than that, because that's generally you don't see as much of other people's spell effects. Although when you're a paladin and you know everything is a blur of gold, then there's enough from your own. It's pets that are more annoying. Particularly on fights where you're having to spread out. Because, especially since joining this new guild, the number of times that I have tried to spread out an Argus for the Ragers, and I've had to move because I thought there was a feral cat there, and it turned out just to be a hunter pet when I'd have been able to stand on it no problem. Whereas eventually, I suppose, when you've been in a guild long enough, you learn what their hunter pets are like. And you learn, you know, the difference between a hunter pet, say, and a feral druid. I mean, sometimes there isn't even a feral druid in the raid, but I'm not thinking of that at the time. So it's pets I don't like. I particularly used to hate in vanilla and TBC flappy pets, because when you have to have your camera zoomed in, then that's all you see is a cloud of feathers. You have a yellow ring around yourself. What is the yellow ring for? How does that remove spell effects? It is awkward if someone's ground effect, which you can see, is very similar to a bad ground effect related to the fight. You always get it at the start of expansions as well, because sometimes they change the animations or graphics. I remember... I don't. Do I? The first time I saw Earthquake for Shaman, it would go down and I'd go, oh shit. Huh? Why is not everyone else moving out? What's going on? Darkness, yeah. Well, you would, wouldn't you? It looks like a void zone. You know, it's not an uncommon ground effect on fights, on raid fights. So yeah, that's the problem with an unfamiliar, well, if it's unfamiliar, but that usually just lasts for the start of an expansion, then you get used to it. But if it's a similar ground effect, to what may be on the fight. So if you're on a fight and there's void zones there, and some demon hunter sticks down a darkness, it'd be like... I mean, at least with darkness, it tends to be a raid cooldown use. They don't just randomly use it themselves. So at least you'd probably have some warning that it's going to go down. It's not just frost DKs, frost mages as well, with their orb, frost orb flying into it. Is also awkward. But yes, it is annoying. It's a shame you can't have an option, and I say this, and then someone's going to tell me there is such an option, but I'm pretty sure there isn't, just to turn off all other players' AoE effects. You know, just have your own on. I mean, I think they are tuned down a bit, sometimes disadvantageously. Because, like, there was a particular situation. What was that trinket? There was a trinket in something. Tomb of Sargeras, Torment of Souls or something. Where it dropped like an elemental thing which it pulls damage. And then it lasted a minute, but the cooldown of the trinket was 45 seconds. So that you use it 45 seconds later, you could drop another one, they'd both pulse. And you could keep cycling that. But no one else could see it. It's like your invisible friend. So what would happen is tanks would then move the mob away from it, and you'd be going, don't move it! Nearly there. And you'd be trying to direct the tank to put the boss back to where it was, but they didn't know where it was because they can't see it. Yes, I thought so, Elgin. So, but it would be nice to have an option just to turn other people's crap off. Trinket from Kil'jaeden. It may have been from Kil'jaeden. I forget now. Because I ended up with quite a high item level one. I can't remember whether I got it from Kil'jaeden Titanforged or whether it was just from the mission cache. I don't remember. But I had one, so I used it a couple of times. But then I quickly realised that if I can't trust the tanks to keep the boss on one spot, that I'm not really getting as much benefit from it as I might otherwise. So, yes. Spectre of Betrayal, there we go, that's it. But yeah, for me personally, it's pets that are the bigger issue. Pains in the arse, if you've got a lot of them especially. The trinket had the balls of energy. Yeah, that was the one that dropped from Maiden. Can't remember what that was called either. I mean, it wasn't a great one for me anyway, so I didn't bother with it. I think rogues were quite happy with it. It was a good one for rogues. There was an Azerite trait that was very similar to it. I think they've got rid of it now because I haven't seen it on any of the newer ones. Or Engine of Eradication, that's it. And it drops these orb things that boost your stats, and it could drop white ones that boost it by a bit and purple ones that boost it by a lot, or different stats or something like that. I can't remember. The problem is it used to chuck them miles away, so I had to go running off after them. But I haven't seen that trait for ages, so I think they've got rid of it. Sometimes they would get stuck in. If you were stuck up against a wall, it'd sometimes go into the wall as well. But yeah, you know, it was also ironic because dropping from Maiden, that was probably the worst fights to have such a trinket like that. You didn't want to do a lot of lateral movement, especially when you were doing the guitar hero bit. It was a tier bonus for Windwalker monks that left energy balls for them to collect. There was a there was a monk ability, wasn't there, for Chi, where they just randomly dropped balls and they could pick up later on. Demon hunters obviously have the same things when they kill something. So the general idea behind it has been around for quite a while. But I suppose with the game's as old as it is, there's only so many actually new ideas you can have. And it doesn't, like when they try it in raids, it doesn't always work out. I mean, I suppose the Illidan phase of Kill Jaden was a genuinely new mechanic. But most of the mechanics you get in raids, it's like you've seen them before. And usually you deal with them in the same way. Oh, with Damp and Harm, they collect them all. I vaguely remember that. Was it just Brewmasters? It was the Engine of Eradication, the Trinket from Maiden. Yes, someone did say that, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's... all these things have been in before. It's very, very difficult to imagine new ability. That's why this uniqueness is a load of rubbish, because there's only so many abilities. The way the game is, there's only so many abilities you can have, and there's not enough of those abilities to furnish 36 different specs. So it's a bit pointless. Hi, Rune Saga. It's a bit pointless having trying to beat the uniqueness drum, because you can't do it with that many specs. And the other thing is, the annoying thing, I was saying this to someone the other day, yesterday maybe. Like, Ian Hazakostas, and I couldn't believe he answered this question in January, back in January. He was asked the question in the live Q&A thing. Do you think there was too much emphasis on specs instead of class, because the whole thing about Legion was class fantasy? And he said yes. He said there has been, and he said what they should do is for utility abilities, not throughput abilities, the other ones, defensives, movement, things like that. He said they should generally be class wide. He said the only exception should be ones that are considered to be strong healer cooldowns, which they should be specific to hit the healing specs only. But he said all the others should be thought of as class utility, not spec. All right, and here we are at the end of class development before it goes live, and he hasn't put any of that into practice. I mean, that's literally what he said in January, and he hasn't done it. Darkness on KJ was a genuinely new mechanic. Was it? Really? I don't think it was. That was just boss does ability, which means you have to move somewhere to shield yourself from it. That's been in the game for a while. They've done that, but that's been in before. Do you think Blizzard are holding back on content updates for beta because of data miners? I think they keep some things from data miners, like the raid Azerite traits. The thing is, though, there's the thing. I know that the developers have been asking for the Azerite traits in Simcraft because they want to do some stuff on it, but they haven't released the raid stuff. So I think there are some things. I mean, I did an interview with Peculiar a while ago, actually, and asking her what she thought about that. So she talks a little bit about, Blizzard will, yes, they will keep some things out if they can, but at the same time they also get a benefit from stuff being data mined because it's a bit of publicity for them, because people do videos on it, and if people are doing a video on some new feature of BFA, that is effectively free advertising for BFA. So they use it as well as are wary of it. Give me your healer, interrupts back. Well, I remember in Legion they were going to take away cleansers and similar abilities from all non-healers. Like, I lost my cleanse, and then they gave it back. So I think that was because of dungeons, to make it, because it's not something you miss in a raid. You don't use it in a raid, but in dungeons you do. Because that's what I mean about utility. Like, I don't really complain about my utility from a dungeon point of view. It's really from a raid point of view. They don't hate data mining. They might have done at one time, but now they don't. In fact, because they like stuff to be data mined. In fact, they need stuff to be data mined so that people can test it out for them. You feel like they took your healer interrupts off because of PvP? Maybe. I don't know. I can't really speak about PvP. They got angry when MMO champion data mined the ending of Wrath. Well, there was a similar thing with data mining the video for the Gul'dan end cinematic. But, I mean, angry is the wrong word. They just basically said, oh, we didn't intend, because it was perfectly valid how it was data mined. There was no funny business going on. Blizzard just didn't intend that it would go out. So they just asked those sites to remove it, and they did. Obviously, a load of people had seen it by then. So, but, Blizzard didn't blame anyone else for that. They knew that that was them putting it up before they intended it to go on. It's a bit like some other things. Like, we knew long before they announced Battle for Azeroth that Kul Tiras was going to be a thing in the next expansion, because they'd put into the game files some, armor sets with Kul Tiran maps on it. Now, whether they, and it's still to be determined whether that was accidental or whether it was deliberate to generate hype. But there are two reasons why they would want things to be data mined. One is to generate hype. The other is so that theory crafters can test stuff out. They need that to be a thing. Data miners can spoil things. Yeah, but if they, not really, because if it would be spoiling something, Blizzard just don't put it into the game files. If they don't, they only need to put things in the game files when they want it to go out. So they can just leave it off the game files when they're not ready for it. Like they've done it with the 2 cinematics in the Battle for Lordaeron scenario. They've done it with the raid, Azerite traits. You know, anything that they don't want there to be data mined, just don't put it in the game files. Easy. They have their own versions of the games, the builds, that they can use for internal purposes anyway. The armour sets felt deliberate, a teaser for the community. It's possible that it was indeed a teaser, but also it's possible that it wasn't. It could be an actual mistake as well. So I don't know. I don't know which it was. I would like to think that it was done deliberately because, you know, they do. I think, you know, there was a time when they didn't appreciate the data mining, but I think they've come to see the benefit to them in it, and there is a benefit to them. And again, like, because that's something else. Not all games companies are as welcoming of people doing videos about them and stuff like that. There are some games companies where if I wanted to do a video about a game, I couldn't show any gameplay footage. Take, for example, Elder Scrolls Online, the latest expansion that came out. So when I was in the beta for that and trying it out, I couldn't use that footage in a video. Because what they do is they put in like watermarks all over the thing your account name. So if you ever did, they'd know who it was and they'd ban your ass. Or at least stop you ever playing beta again. So there are some game companies that really don't like you doing stuff. They like to be very controlling. Blizzard don't. They're absolutely fine, you know. And they know that they get a benefit from it because they know that although some people may say negative things about their product, it's going to be overwhelmingly positive and it's therefore a marketing boon for them. Also, as I say, traditional, I don't know whether it's correct or not, traditional marketing adage is, you know, there's no such thing as bad publicity, isn't there? So yes, but yeah, you could probably try and find that interview with Peculiar. I suppose if you just looked up Peculiar on my in my videos list, it will come up somewhere. It was done a while ago now. It was this year though, I think. Was it? Oh, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, 10th of Feb. Where can I post that? Right, okay. So yes, that's that one. Next. Just trying to see if there's any more news I've missed out as well. What do I think story-wise they're setting up for? The end of Old Gods. Whether they're also setting up for the Awakening of Azeroth, I don't know. It's possible. But I think they're setting it up for the end of the Old Gods. On Azeroth, obviously there's still Old Gods elsewhere. Is the Mage Tower up permanently? So it is rumoured. So it is rumoured. Until, of course, it'll never be up again. So it looks like, even though Blizzard haven't yet announced it, that I'm sure someone will ask and they'll reply that it's just going to be left up now. I don't know when it's supposed to end. Is it supposed to end when BFA goes live, or is it supposed to end when the pre-expansion patch comes out? Because technically it's tied to the artifact quest line, and that's going to be a bit meaningless when the pre-expansion patch comes out. So it could be that the Mage Tower won't be available after like 3 weeks' time. So that may be why they're leaving it up now. And maybe there'll be an announcement that it won't be active after the pre-patch goes live. After 8.0, basically. But it seems to be up permanently at the moment, yes. If only the Nether Disruptor with the free seals was up permanently. Every day you can get yourself a free seal. Forever. You might as well at this point of the expansion. The new talent trees did come in MOP, yes. But at the end of Kata, of course, you know, with the pre-MOP patch, that's when they became active. You do think it's time to move on from the old Warcraft stories and lore, but not sure they could pull new stuff off. Well, see, I was as surprised as anyone, well, more surprised than most, when they finished off the Legion. Because even when it was looking like that's what they were going to be doing, I was still the one going, nah, they're never going to do that. They'll never do that. And the reason I thought that was because of Warlords of Draenor. Because, from my point of view, this is how the Warcraft story's gone. It's like building on Warcraft 3 storylines all the way up to MOP. MOP, genuinely new stuff. All new stuff. Okay, Pandaren sort of existed, but but all the stuff with the Mogu and all that business, all of it was new. All right. So I thought to myself, oh, this is fantastic. However, people didn't think it was fantastic. So then the next expansion was completely the opposite of that. It was like, okay, people don't want new stuff. We're going to bring back all the old stuff, all of the old stuff. And then someone said, oh, but a load of those are dead. All right, no problem. Alternate universe time travel. So that's what they did there. So after that, I thought that they were put off doing completely new lore. And I thought we were just going to be recycling Warcraft 3 stories over and over and over again, like has happened. Because World of Warcraft, actually, compared to Warcraft 1, 2 and 3, has been desolate for storylines. You know, it hasn't really driven the narrative forward at all in any serious way. People have died and new people have become leaders of their faction, sure. But by and large, nothing really seems to have changed. And then they went and killed off, well, not killed, but defeated the Legion. And at that point, it's like, oh, okay. And then the first raid we're going to do in BFA is one that is a testing facility to see how you can kill an old god without harming Azeroth. At which point you're thinking, oh, we're going to kill old gods. Because before that, the official line was, you can't kill old gods, because not that they're unkillable, but that you kill Azeroth by doing so. So they've basically just got to stay imprisoned. So effectively untouchable. Whereas now, it's a case of, but if we could poison them and not harm Azeroth, and they die, that'll work. So that's what that's about. So, and I think that's what they're doing for that. Which means they must be gearing up for something massively new. A completely new direction in the story. So maybe someone's grown a pair of balls or something like that and decided that they don't need to keep leaning on Warcraft 3. Because apart from anything else, I would imagine that the vast majority of people playing World of Warcraft now, although I can't know this, didn't even play Warcraft 3 or haven't played it. So, you know. They did put a last chance Legion Wars on the Battle.net, have they? You think they heard they're setting up a big gnome expansion? I almost read that as a big gnome explosion then. That wouldn't have surprised me. Let's have a look. No, okay. No, I can't see anything on my Battle.net. It's cycling between Battle for Azeroth arrives August 14th and Midsummer Fire Festival. Maybe it hasn't caught up yet. Let's have a look here. Oh, no, hold on. There is now a comment. So what's the blue saying? Just giving some context to this. Yes, it is officially up permanently until pre-patch. So you've got 3 weeks. Due to how the Broken Shore functions, the buildings will still be created and destroyed in the normal cycles. However, the NPC is now resistant to Legion Fellfire, TM, and will just permanently be standing there. Once pre-patch hits, though, the appearances will no longer be obtainable, so make sure you guys go get it while you have the chance. So all artifacts will be level 126 with Mage Tower up all the time. Yep, and they get stronger every week until pre-patch. Go get them appearances. On reset every week, your artifact will continue to grow unstable, which makes it more powerful. So next week, your concordance will rise again. So AP is useless then, I suppose. Fine. 8.0 on the background downloader, is it? Ah, is it? It's trying to download something. I can't see what yet at the moment. It's been a bit slow. But okay, I shall take your word for that. Well, there you go then. Well, it probably is NA at the moment only because it's reset day for NA. We get our reset tomorrow. So yes, I guess that just means if you haven't done the Silithus quests up to that point, you might as well do them today. I shall do them today because I changed faction. So yeah, so I'll go and do those at some point after this. Oop, right. Actually, yeah, that was a weird thing I noted. Because yesterday, Blizzard were tweeting those videos. You know the videos for both Horde and Alliance? Like for Horde, it's Anduin doing that speech. Basically where the leaders of the factions are being shown Azerite. And told what's going off in Silithus. But it said on the tweet, spoiler. And I thought it's not a spoiler because that's been in game for ages. How's it a spoiler? I think it's just because you would only have seen that cinematic if you'd have killed Argus. And maybe a lot of people haven't done that even on LFR. So those people are now automatically getting that quest even if they haven't killed Argus. Or people on characters that haven't killed Argus. Which also means that Argus, the planet, is no longer in the skyline for anyone. It's a good job I took lots of screenshots. I shall miss it. Well, I already did miss it. What I don't need to see is a big red dot in the sky, but that's what we've got now. Have they said anything else interesting? No, it's just confirmations, I think. It's something to do with Argus, yes. Because it appeared... Argus basically zipped into the background and left this thing there. I don't know what it's supposed to be. You know, I have a degree in astrophysics, but I do not know what that is supposed to be. So I'm guessing it's magic. Illidan and Sargeras fighting. I don't think they're supposed to be actually fighting. I think Sargeras is well and truly chained up. Maybe Illidan is beating him up as an evil jailer. He did have a look of relish on his face. But, yeah. Let's have a look here. So, it says, the blue says, it should only affect artifacts that are below that value. So if you have above Concordance 75, it should keep you at that Concordance value. However, you might notice it jump up in a week or two. This just simply, upon completion, moves everyone to Concordance 75, and then next week another bump, and then another. You get the picture. TLDR, smash everything. Okay. Could be something unexpected on the way. They do like their unexpected things at the end of an expansion, yes. Maybe Sargeras will corrupt Illidan's mind in the next 10,000 years. Well, you know, there is the little matter of the Pantheon of Titans there as well. I don't think it's as simple as Illidan letting him out. Also, Sargeras didn't tend to corrupt in the same way as old gods did. He just tended to do his pretending to be nice and conning people trick. It's probably not really going to work against Illidan. No, we're not. No, I really don't. I think it's going to be full on. It's the next story now. The story started. The Legion stuff is, I'm fairly sure, just done with. I think it's done. Until they decide it's not done. I mean, Onyxia was done. You know, I cut her head off. I even hung it up on Stormwind Gates. And then she came back. And I'm not even talking about undead Onyxia. So, you know, when even having your head cut off is just a flesh wound in this game, anything can happen. But we've sort of come to the end for this week. So I'm going to close it off there. I had better, yes, get off and do those Magni quests, I suppose, for tomorrow. So that I'm all nice and, I don't know, whatever, all caught up when it does go live in Europe tomorrow. It's a little bit mean, actually, not actually providing any notice for people in North America who have it today, I guess. But thanks for coming on, everyone. I will put this up on YouTube. As I say, it takes a little bit of time to process, but it'll go up probably a couple of hours or something like that. So thanks for coming on. Have a good night, everyone, and until next time, I shall see you.